get started with Raven from Illinois Service Resource Center, who is going to show us about differentiated learning.
Hi everybody, good morning. Can you hear me okay? I'm a really loud talker. Do I need to move my mic further away? Okay. I'm not even used to using a mic. I'm that loud. So if I get too crazy, just give me a wave. And Raven, you're at a 10. We need you at a 5. I'm used to that, and I'm okay with it. This is a speedy overview. My whole presentation is hopefully going to be done in 20 minutes or less, and we'll talk about why that is at the very end. It was just sort of something fun that we wanted to throw in the mix to get you guys charged up this morning and thinking about different ways that you can work with your students in groups. Interpreters, feel free to shout out when I get going a little too fast. You guys are used to me by now. Again, I'm Raven Stromek. I'm with the Illinois Service Resource Center. My official title is Deaf and Hard of Hearing Behavior Coach. My background is I studied to become a teacher of the deaf. I also have a master's degree as a reading specialist, and I've worked with kids who have challenges in addition to their hearing loss ever since I stepped foot out of college. So that's sort of my forte. It's my passion. Some people call it crazy. I call it passionate, and that's sort of why I do what I do and what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. We have a lot of different students at a lot of different levels in our classes these days, and it's really hard to accommodate all of those needs in one classroom all at the same time. So a lot of teachers find themselves struggling with, how do I meet all their IEP goals? How do I meet all the Common Core goals? How do I do this and that? How do I work with 5 different students on 5 different levels, all in one classroom without any assistance? Some of you are lucky enough to have assistance, but most of you probably are not. So it really is a challenge, and there's a bunch of different ways that we can go about doing that, and that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about today. One of the first things that I wanted to talk about is prompts and support. Has anybody heard of the prompt hierarchy? Just a few. Okay, this is really important because how many IEP goals do you write that says so-and-so will XYZ with 3 prompts? And then next year you're like, okay, well, yeah, he can do it with 3 prompts, but he still doesn't really do it. So now what? So now you write with 2 or fewer prompts, right? And then the next year you're like, with 1 prompt or less, right? And so then eventually we hope that we can get down to that they'll do it without prompts. For a lot of our students, that may or may not be possible, depending on the goal, depending on the skill. So if we think about the prompt hierarchy, that's a way that we can really address this issue without just getting into a numbers game. If we talk about the level of prompts that we're going to use and the type of prompts that we're going to use, that gives us a lot more flexibility. So we may still have 3 prompts, but maybe in year 1, that's a full physical assist, where we are actually hand over hand writing Joe. But then by next year, maybe it's a partial physical assist. Maybe we're just kind of guiding by his elbow. Joe. That's a big improvement. We've made a lot of progress that way. But if we just said 3 prompts, each letter, J-O-E, 1 prompt, it wouldn't show that we're getting anywhere. But if we use the specific types of prompts, then that really helps us be clearer as to know how we're going to go about approaching this goal. If you look at this is the prompt hierarchy. If you look at the top, full physical assist, this would be the most involved prompt, and then at the bottom, independent. So it's a hierarchy of sort of most involved to least involved. So moving from a full staff assist to independence. You can read, but I'm going to read for you. So we have full physical assist at the top, then we move down to partial physical assist. Those are the 2 that I kind of talked to you about already. Modeling, so that would be the idea of I do it, you do it, I do it, you do it. And so then we're just kind of showing them, and we're not actually putting any hands on them. Video modeling is a really good strategy that you could use for this level of prompting. Gesturing, so that would be sort of pointing. You point a name, Joe, write your name on the paper. Now we're not actually guiding Joe's elbow. We're not even saying, I write my name, you write your name. We're just kind of pointing to his paper, and Joe knows that that line at the top of the paper is the place where he puts Joe. Visual spatial, so that's when we give some written or some picture directions depending on the reading and language abilities of our students. There are a lot of different strategies that go along with this. Being in deaf education, most of us use a lot of visual strategies as is, but there's a lot of different strategies that we can put into place that we don't really think of. Some of them academic, some of them behavioral. So there's a lot of different ways that we can go about using those. A direct verbal, that's telling them what to do. Joe, write your name. Joe, write your name. So it would be giving that direction without any sort of tapping or prompting. An indirect verbal, this is something that I see a lot of women in the room, so as moms we tend to do this. We're like, we're getting ready to go. What do you need to do? And what do we expect? We want them to go to the bathroom, we want them to put on their shoes, get their coat. So we don't really give them the answer, but we let them know, like, you're supposed to be doing something right now. Let's go. And so that's something that we can do with our students too. What do you need to do next? What's the next step? Where are you supposed to be? That's an indirect verbal prompt. So these are all strategies that you guys are using, right? You just didn't know what they were called, and you weren't really writing them into their goals. So this is some good language that you can incorporate to be more clear as to what you mean when you're writing your goals. And then of course independent. So you put their paper on their desk and they know the first thing they're supposed to do is write their name. Does that make sense? Awesome. In differentiated learning, there's a lot of research that shows there's 4 ways to differentiate instruction. The 4 ways are by topic or content, process or activity, the actual final product, the way that they demonstrate their learning, or adjusting the environment or their learning styles. We've all learned a lot about different learning styles, and I'll give you some resources about that later. In your printout, there is the link in there, so you guys would be able to go and find that resource that's going to outline those 4 areas for you. The first way is by topic or content. So this is the way that you're going to approach various areas of knowledge, various levels of skill. Maybe you have to do a unit. Maybe you're talking about something we could all relate to, hearing loss. You have to teach your students about hearing loss, but maybe within a group of 5 or 6, everybody's learning about a different piece of their hearing loss, or everybody's learning about their audiogram, but at a different level. Somebody's just learning the basics, where somebody else is actually maybe plotting their own audiogram or explaining to you what their audiogram means. So that would be taking that same overall unit, but breaking it down to different pieces of the topic. I put on here learn at their own rate and abilities and interests, which is really important, because if we just give them some choice, and if we do some pre-assessments to guide what do they know already and where do we need to go from there, it really helps us. An example that I give from this is you go into a preschool or a kindergarten classroom and you're learning the ABCs. We start at A, week 1. Week 2, we do letter B. Week 3, C. Week 4, D. Well, my name starts with A, so I already knew A when I came in, and Mom starts with M, and I know that that letter looks like this. So that's 2 weeks of my life that just got wasted because I already knew those 2 letters, even if it's only 2 letters. Most of our kids come in knowing a little bit of some of their letters, or a couple of numbers, or a few vocabulary words that we end up teaching them when they didn't really need to learn it. So if we do some evaluation, we find out what letters they know, what words do they know, and then we kind of skip those letters for them, or we just do it as a quick review, we've bought ourselves a whole lot of time to teach them other things, which is really important. So when you're differentiating by content or topic, here's just a couple of tips or a couple of different things that you can think about. Doing a pre-assessment so you know what they know and where you want to go with it. Giving the students choice. We're going to learn about your audiogram, or let's say letters. We're going to learn the alphabet. What letter do you want to start with? Do you know any letters that you'd like to learn? If we can give them that choice, it's going to really increase their motivation and keep them engaged. Breaking down one general topic into smaller pieces, the example that I gave about the audiogram, or each student covers a different topic. Also, sort of, you could relate it to that example with the audiogram. So either we're all learning about the type of hearing loss we have, but everybody has a different hearing loss, or we're talking about hearing loss in general, our audiogram, but each person is going to learn about their audiogram at a different level. These are just some examples that you can just take a quick look at about different ways that you could differentiate by topic. In the middle here is a link that you'll be able to go back to where I got these examples from, and they had a lot of others. So just some good references for you guys to be able to look back on. Just by looking at these few examples, you could see how some of them are much higher level thinking activities, higher level skills are required to be successful at them, and then some of them are really adapted to meet the needs of some of our lower functioning or some of our more struggling students. For example, this response card right here, it sort of gives them the options already, so it's just sort of choosing instead of having to come up with the idea off the top of their head. We're giving them options. Up here, this would be an exit slip from the same exact activity. So it says, explain the difference between simile and metaphor. Give some examples of each as part of your explanation. Versus the right-hand side says, happy as a clam is an example of, and then they have to pick simile or metaphor. So even if they're in the same class learning the same content, the way that you kind of check them out of the class to see what they were able to gain from your lesson, you can just adjust that a little bit to meet the needs of the various students in your class. The next way to differentiate instruction is by process or activity. So you have a varied amount of activities or strategies that you, the teacher, the way that you are presenting the information, and then also a variety of strategies that the students are engaging in learning or the way that the students are giving that information back to you. Does that make sense? A lot of times we think about the ways that we present information. Oh, I'm going to use a PowerPoint. Oh, I'm going to use a flip chart. Oh, here's some manipulatives. Here's a workbook or a novel that we're going to look at, but we don't really think about the way that the students are going to interact with it. We do, but we don't consciously call it that. So there's a difference between the way that we provide the information and the way that they interact with the information, and that's what we're talking about here. How do they interact with the information? So we could do that with different stations or different centers around the room. I have a lot of teachers who say, yeah, that's great for kindergarten and preschool, but I teach middle school, but I teach high school. I happen to have several high school teacher friends who do stations at the high school level and are finding a great deal of success with it. It helps them take data so that they know what the students know and where they need to go next. It also helps them meet the needs of the variety of students in their classroom, and I see a bunch of them going like this. Yep, I'm middle school, that's what I do. Yep, I'm high school, that's what I do. And there's sort of this stigma that stations and centers are for the younger kids, but they're really appropriate for the upper grades too. It just matters how we approach it, how we set it up. So if you're feeling a little bit stuck and you're not sure how to do that, definitely contact ISRC. We can come out and help you brainstorm some of those ideas so that you can meet the needs of the students in your classroom. If you've never taught that way before, if you are more of a presentation, lecture style, I love my PowerPoint type of a teacher, it's hard to break away from that. But when you break away from that is when you really have the opportunity to teach multiple levels at the same time. Oh, I've got 5 kids, they're all totally different in my class, I have no assistant, how do I do that? Well, you have to, because those are the kids that we have, and that's the situation that we're in. In a special ed classroom, we're never going to get 5 kids who are on the same level, you know? So we really have to branch out and think of different ways that we can do that. The last one that I listed were tasks and checklists. I just wanted to point out that's a really good way, one of those visual strategies, to give them, you have to do these 3 things in this class period. You can do them in whatever order you want. You can do them with a partner. You can do them by yourself. You can do them in a group of 3. But these are the 3 things that you need to accomplish in this class period. These are the 4 things. These are the 5 things. Some of you guys have block scheduling, so you have like 80 minutes, 90 some odd minutes of class time that you're trying to keep these students engaged. Whew, that is a task and a half. So if we have this checklist of different things that they can be working on, it helps them keep moving. It also helps them know exactly what they need to get done, and it helps them stay on track. These are some examples of different ways that you could differentiate that. It's in your handout, and you could find it in the resources. Another strategy for this area is graphic organizers. This enchantedlearning.com/graphic organizers has this great resource. We all have some sort of binder probably of 1,000,001 graphic organizers, but it's really hard to figure out how to sort them and what's the right one I'm looking for and how do I get new ones. So you can go here and it has it all organized by the different styles, and then each one of those that you click on is like a ton within that file. So it's like already filed and organized for you, which I love. Product, so what the students do with the learning. How do they show mastery? How do they show that they learned what you wanted them to know? You can do a traditional test. That's what a lot of us resort to because we're like, well, we have to give them a grade. How do we give them a grade if we don't give them a test? There's a lot of different ways that we can do assessments. You could use rubrics. You could give them a portfolio project where you're just sort of keeping samples along the way. So if you're doing stations, you go through and you pull out, one from each station to get a sample of how they were able to perform. With technology now, I have a lot of teachers who are like, well, but it was manipulatives. So get your iPad, get your smartphone, take a picture of what they accomplished at that station before you move on. Now you have a permanent product. You load it up onto your computer under Joe Schmo, and then you have a portfolio over time of this is what he did the first time, this is what he did a week later, 3 weeks later, things like that. Again, RogerTaylor.com has this grid of a bunch of different products that you could use, and they are based on multiple intelligences. So if you go to the second page, he breaks them down into which type of multiple intelligence has which type of activities that are conducive to that style of learning. It's really pretty cool. So if you know you have a student who's really kinesthetic, or you have a kid who's specifically visual, you can go to that section and look for ideas of the types of products that they might be most interested with engaging. I've also had some teachers do an interest inventory with their students and then show them this list and say, which are the ones that are your favorites? And then they're able to identify which ones they prefer or not. Some of them think, they're like, oh yeah, I love rap. I want to do all my projects in rap. And then the teacher's like, okay, so we're going to learn about your audiogram, and I need you to write a rap about your audiogram. And they're like, oh, I don't like it like that. I like to listen to rap. I'm not so good at making rap. So it's really helpful to help them sort of differentiate between interests and skills. What are the things they like to do and what are the things that they're good at? Manipulating the environment and the learning styles, so how students learn and how students present the information. Again, I touched on this a little bit in one of the earlier sections, but we have how the teachers present the information. Maybe you lecture, maybe you demonstrate, maybe you let the students come up and teach the class, maybe you use some technology, and then also thinking about how the students engage with the learning. So maybe cooperative learning groups, having some worksheets or an outline that they have to fill in, letting them work with a partner or a peer. Or I've seen a lot of teachers have success with an information scavenger hunt. It might be something they have to do in their textbook. It might be something they have to do around the room. It might be something they do on the internet. It might be something that they do with a peer. Find out about your friend's audiogram. Find out about your friend's assistive technology. Find out about how your friend communicates with their family at home. Different things like that. Whew, are you keeping up? I'm almost done. So this is just a quick little cheat sheet that I put together, a bunch of different opportunities for students to respond. Even if you're going to do sort of a question and answer or a classroom discussion, throwing in something funky like having them write their answer on Post-it notes. Post-it notes increase motivation. Crazy time, like you cannot believe, you hand them some colored sticky paper and they're like, woo, we hit the jackpot. We don't know what's so exciting about it, but it is. Giving them some kind of a smensel or a smen, increasing motivation. So the different ways that we can get, even if it's a typical pencil and paper task, smensels and smens, I see some people like turn into their partners and cluing them in. It's a smelly pen or a smelly pencil, all the rage right now. So even if you're going to have them do a worksheet, but you give them some sort of funky tool to be writing with, increase motivation. Now they want to do the task because they've got this cool some kind of flittering, glowing puff ball for the princess girls in your class, some kind of pink baton. Love it. Okay, food for thought. That was 20 minutes. 19 really, but I want to be done in 20 minutes. Research shows that the average adult in a selected task can only attend for 20 minutes at a time. If they're highly motivated, if they have a high level of interest, if they had some sort of choice. You guys are ahead of the game because you sort of chose to be here. You like coming. You know we have good food that we're going to give you a little bit later. So you guys are already ahead of the curve. Plus, I'm a little crazy. I'm hard to ignore. So in those 20 minutes, I gave you a lot of information. You're probably feeling very overwhelmed. Our class periods, 40 minutes, 50 minutes, 87 minutes or something crazy. So imagine that for our students. In this little section right here, it says, common estimates for sustained attention to a freely chosen task ranges from about 5 minutes in a 2-year-old to a maximum of 20 minutes in adults. A maximum of 20 minutes in adults. Think about that when we're planning for our students. If we stand up in front of the room and we talk to them for 40 minutes, we've lost them after about 5. We have so many teachers who complain, he's off task, she's off task, they won't attend, oh my gosh, they're out of their seat all the time. This is why. It's not them. It's a little bit of us. And so if we can make it more fun, if we can give them some motivation, if we can vary it up, if we have our checklist and it has one thing, read chapter 4, we're in big trouble. We need multiple activities in our class periods to keep our students engaged. That's it. Questions? All right, we're going to take just a quick break. We're going to do a changing of the guards. Lisa Bendinelli is going to come up and get her stuff set. She's going to be our next almost hour, I believe. And then we'll take a break after that.